Thank you, and thank you for joining us for our afternoon meeting today. Do we have any needs for translation? Nope? Okay. At this time, I will accept a motion to approve today's agenda.
I will make that motion.
And I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. At this time, we will turn the time over to our superintendent for board recognition.
Yeah, our friend Miles he's dragging this out. He's enjoying the recognition. So Miles notified us at the last minute that he would not be able to attend today. So we're going to push that back.
Okay, no problem. Do we have anything for our student rep report?
Well, September 5th is our first football game. Okay. That's exciting. We've been working on a lot of leadership stuff with ASB for the past week. There's nothing much besides freshman orientation on the 28th, first day of school on the 29th. But that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. We will now move into board member discussion and check in with Director Gerber for our legislative report.
Nothing major. Washington, D.C. just shut down for the month. One of the things they put off was the appropriations committee stuff, which includes education. So they'll get to continue fighting about that in September when they come back.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else for board member discussion? Okay. At this time, I will accept a motion to approve the required approvals.
I will make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to C2, required approvals, early accounts payable warrants 2.
I'll make a motion to approve early accounts payable warrants 2.
And I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3 with 1 abstention. And now we will turn the time over to Dr. Perez for superintendent informational items.
Just 2 brief items this afternoon. We certainly want to save space and time for the budget presentation, which will be the bulk of our meeting. I do want to start with the site visit calendar. As you'll remember, in June, the board went through a process where we discussed adjusting the site visit tone and kind of purpose for those meetings. We did confirm the calendar with our administrators last week, and so this is the updated calendar. 2 reminders for you, I think. Number 1 is we'd asked each board member to invite a constituent to join them. So looking for a group of 10 that will be able to join us on that date on the 15th. I want to give you the initial times right now. The draft agenda would start about 8 a.m. and it would end at around 11:30. And we would visit a couple of our school campuses to watch breakfast after the bell. We'd visit the transportation center, food service, storage, those kinds of things, operational, and then a chance to engage with those 3 departments. So wanted to put that date on your calendars and to hopefully encourage you to reach out to folks. And if Maidisa needs to coordinate and get them details, we can certainly handle that piece. So.
And we would, like, for example, on the 15th, we would meet here and travel out together?
Yeah, great question. Our initial idea is to meet out at transportation, out at the bus garage, and then we'll secure 3 or 4 district vehicles and have folks jump in and then drive from site to site and then end our visit out there as well.
Okay.
So we would be able to invite a constituent to each one of these?
No, just bring 1 person for the whole experience.
Oh, okay.
So they would get a chance to see all of those different sites and different interactions.
Okay, so 1 person, and they're going to come, you want them to commit to like all of these dates as best they can?
Just the I would think you'd have 1 member show up on the 15th, somebody new on the 20th, a different person on the 3rd, but you could work through that. I thought Aaron meant we would want someone different on the 15th at each of those areas. But no, my thought is, I think the intent was to broaden our communication with key communicators.
Okay.
And so if you can identify a number of people that would participate, that would be almost 50 people throughout the year if we could get that many to commit. And you could find, 7 or 8 in your circle that could do that.
Perfect.
And if there were repeat folks who we thought did a good job and were asking the right questions and communicating the story of the school district, certainly would welcome them back.
Okay, we will start thinking of people who we can invite.
Yep. The second item, I want to invite Carlos Gonzalez forward. Carlos has been leading a project this summer with participation from the high school and the middle school. And so we wanted to give you just a brief update on the athletic and activities handbook and some refinements we've made to that process.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Today, just to keep this brief, because I know we need to get into budget, just wanted to share some of the quick changes that we've made to the revisions of the OSD student or athletic and activities handbook. It's gone through several revisions, and so it was important to at least inform you of what those revisions mean and look like. What you see on this document here that I've shared with you all is basically just a quick summary of the changes that have occurred, but things that I do want to highlight, for example, include the expanded philosophy statement. Working with a stakeholders group that included Dr. Perez, Dr. Meek, the Othello High School administration, and also including the middle school administration. We felt it was important to include district language around the graduate profile to basically completely revise what the athletic philosophy has been for years, and something that's more streamlined and current with our values and beliefs in our district around that. And so that's clearly outlined with the 5 different components of that, which includes critical thinking, being a good communicator, being a learner, being a collaborator, and an advocate. And so it was important that we have language in that as our philosophy for athletics and activities. Also, the 712 eligibility requirements. In the past, it's that also went through some revisions where we now have thresholds, clear thresholds when it comes to attendance, behavior, and academics. When it comes to academics, what that language reads, and if you do you have the handbook? Do you have a copy of it? If you go to page 5 of the handbook, do you have a copy of the handbook? On this document that you see there, there's a link to the handbook. So if you can minimize that link on the top, you have access to it to see it. It's open to the public or anyone who wants to see it. And so there, if you go to page 5 of that document, if you can't access it now, there it is. You'll see on page 5 that to participate in OSD athletics and activities, you must be able to do these things. So what we've done now in this committee, 712, that applies at 712, is providing very clear language of what that eligibility needs to look like. For example, for attendance, students must be in class and on time at least 90% of the time or greater in a 4-week period. So if you look at a timeline from A to B, we're looking at a 4-week window that'll shift, that'll move along the school year, where we would provide greater focus around attendance for kids to maintain their eligibility. Of course, we're going to be mindful of exceptions that need to be made for medical appointments, family emergencies, funerals, or other unavoidable circumstances. Same for behavior. If you imagine a 4-week period, what we're talking about is students cannot have more than one skyward referral in a 4-week period, and that's something we'll be monitoring as well. I've been working with the OHS team for the Powerless to Powerful work and the systems that we're putting in place to closely monitor student attendance and behavior and academics. And so we have some really good systems in place now that really just comes down to the implementation and consistent monitoring of that. And so a pretty good team there to be able to do that. And then, of course, the academics piece. It used to be that students couldn't fail any course at any time. That was more of a local decision. But what we've done is we've gone to the WIA.
To protect our most impactful programs while still trying to be fiscally minded. We want to lead with integrity. We want to hold ourselves accountable with high standards. And the very last sentence on here is kind of where we're going. This budget reflects the really hard choices that we have made the past couple of years, and this one coming year is going to be even harder. Through all of it, we want to be transparent to our community and to our members. The next slide. I know this is Mariah's first one, so there's some some words you might not know, so we're going to go through a couple of them. A budget is just a projection. We're just estimating what we think our revenues are going to be and what our expenses are going to be. It's not it's not black and white. When we work on a budget, we forecast. Like I said, we're forecasting not only our revenues and expenses, but also our enrollment. That's the big one.
Hey, Amy, you want to define budget extension?
So a budget extension would come if I were to tell you that I needed you guys to approve an $80 million budget, and then then we're in May, and we've exceeded that amount, and we need to hurry up and get a resolution filed because we need authority to spend $4 million more, for example. A lot of our districts, surrounding districts, are having to do that during this month. So. The IPD, you'll hear that word a lot. It's the implicit price deflator. OSPI sets this in January of each year, and it tells us what the increases will be to our revenues. This year it was 2.5%, and for reference, the previous 2 years it was 3.7%. The other one is prototypical funding model, and that is a model that OSPI uses of how they fund our teachers or our staff. If we have this number of students in McFarland, that means you're going to have this many custodians, principals, teachers, etc. It's all based on a model that they have. MSOCs are material supplies and operating costs, which is everything but salaries. TK is the transition to kinder. One of the things that I wanted to bring out about TK is that there was legislative action to limit the number of TKs that we're going to be funded this coming year. Because we started one of our classes in January and they go by adjusted annual adjusted FTE, they capped us at 72. But we did receive word that for us to go ahead and count all of our TK students because there might be funding at the end of the school year for it. So right now our FTE, what we're going to have next year with added classroom is going to be 86. Local effort assistance, that is the amount that we get if we pass our levy. Fund balance is what we have after our expenses and revenues are paid and received. So we project what our beginning fund balance is going to be, and then we get our revenues minus our expenditures, and that's our ending fund balance. It's our actual cash in the bank. Binding conditions. This is a new one this year because it's something that's been happening a lot in our state. That is, district goes into binding conditions when they cannot project a budget without being in the negative in their cash. So right now there's 8 school districts in binding conditions. And if you would have looked at how many we had prior to these past 3 years, it would have been 0. So. The next slide, financial management. I think the biggest thing from this slide is that I think we should all have financial management in the forefront of us. We should all be thinking what is fiscally responsible for our school district and for our community. The next slide. So the district has 5 funds. We have the general fund, the capital projects fund, the debt service fund, the associated student body fund, and the transportation vehicle fund. The general fund is our biggest fund, and that's what we use for the instruction of our students. What I've highlighted in the debt service fund is that our current balance as of 12/31/24 was $7.4 million, and that our last scheduled payment is scheduled to be made December 2027. The next slide shows what we're asking the board to approve at our next board meeting for expenditures in each fund. Sorry, do you guys have any questions?
maybe it's gonna show up later in the slide, so I understand this is what you're asking for. Do you know what our income is?
Yes, we'll be
We'll get there?
showing our
Okay.
revenue. So in the next slide, what are some of the major changes? When I started working on this presentation, beginning of July, we had received word from OSPI to use our federal grants now. Actually, they said spend them yesterday. So when I made our budget, it includes a lot of the carryover that we thought we were going to have. But then we got to spending more of our federal grants. So it might be a little less revenues than what I anticipated, because we were in the mindset of we have to spend our federal grants. We might have it today, not tomorrow. So the other thing is we are having to use more of our federal grants every year, and so that means that our carryover into the next year is less. So for example, in Title I, we're able to carry over 15%. And in most years, we are able to carry that forward, but because our expenses are increasing, that carryover is becoming less and less every year. We are continuing right sizing, so we are decreasing the number of positions. And then the other one is that our grants, our state and federal grants, are not keeping up with IPD, the 2.5%.
I just want to add a little bit of context to Director Prowse's question. What you'll begin to see graphically represented, I'm not sure what slide it is, but you'll see over the last 10 years where we're finally at a point where expenditures and revenues cross in the wrong way. You know, typically the board has been able and the district has been able to spend just under what comes in and build a bit of a reserve for moments like we're in now. We've crossed that threshold.
The legislative impacts, I've said it before, the IPD is 2.5%, and this is for our funded FTEs, not all our FTEs. MSOC, we did receive a little bit of an increase. When I calculated it out, it's like a 5.3% increase. So MSOCs will increase by $191,000, which isn't very much compared to what we do spend. What the amount that's unfunded. Special education, they went away with the 3-tier model, and that will indicate that we're going to get about $278,000 more in spend money. They also removed the cap, but because our sped enrollment is less than the 16%, that didn't affect our revenues for sped.
Okay, I had heard people saying that special education funding was decreasing. Sounds like that's not the case.
That is not the case. It did decrease during this school year, 24-25, compared to my budget, because our enrollment in sped was under projected.
Okay,
Maybe that's what you've heard.
okay.
In SEB, that's our state insurance, our medical insurance, it increased by 11%. So that would mean that every position that's not funded, or for every sub that we have to pay insurance, that's an $1,300 a month expense. And then I did put in there for the 24-25, the SEB premiums that we paid for 27 substitutes is $147,000.
I think SEB is a really good example of where a school district and a board and a community have to begin to make decisions about what their priorities are. Because if you play the math game, you say, as soon as you get up to this number of hours, even if you're our most skilled and qualified sub, the best sub for our kids, we're no longer going to offer you substitute work, because then we have to pay for your insurance for the rest of the year. And we can't afford to do that. Those are the kinds of conversations that school districts are having to have, that have maybe deeper sub pools and are running into this barrier to try and save a little bit of money.
Can we, is it an option to say, we'd love for you to sub, but we're not going to provide insurance for you regardless, or
It
is
is
that a
not,
state law?
yeah, that's not an option. We're not allowed to do that.
Dang.
HB 2049, local effort assistance, is giving districts who qualify for local effort assistance, that means you pass the levy and you're at $1.50, a temporary 2-year boost. In the next slide, I'll show you how much that means. But it does show, I have the amount there, it's $3,964,000 in that boost if we pass the levy. And if
Per
we're at
year
the
or
$1.50.
total?
Total for the
Total.
2 years.
Wow.
So in the next slide, if you'll see the amount per student that's highlighted, it's increasing to 1,332. Sorry, it's high. And then in 27, it's 1,565. And then it's going to go back down. So it's a temporary boost that they're giving us. And like I said, this is if the biggest amount's going to come in 2027 if we pass our levy.
One point of interest for the board regarding levies, just this last week, they announced the special election results for a term in Washington I think is going to become more and more prevalent. It's a supplemental levy. So I believe it was the Shoreline School District ran a levy for 1 year just to help close some of these gaps they've identified. And so in a place like Shoreline, where you can tax everyone for an extra 20 cents and raise, $6 million, not possible in a place like Othello. But those inequities are going to start to come into the system if the state doesn't intervene and fix the allocation model. People are going to try and fix it for themselves in their own communities, and we shouldn't begrudge them that, right? They can tax themselves, but it might slow down Olympia from helping everyone at scale. So supplemental levy, if you're in WASDA or in some of those settings, that's a new phrase. And if you wanted, I'll get you an article about it, and you can look at what they did.
I think it's the first one that they ran. Is anybody has run a supplemental levy. So they had a current 4-year levy, and so now they're going to have a 1-year levy at the end of that 4-year levy.
Wow.
So, in the next slide, this is off the OSPI, and I thought it was a really good slide to show where we have received, how much we have received in levy LEA throughout the years. One of the things that I pointed out to Pete last week was like, Pete, look in 2018, the first year of the post-McCleary decision. Look how much money we received in levy LEA. It was $8.47 million. So that's where when they were making those contract negotiations, that's how much we were receiving, right? And then all of a sudden, it just kept going less. And so the decrease that we've gotten in LEA throughout the years has also been due to the decline in enrollment and the increase of property values. So how do we get our revenues? It's all based on our enrollment. So our enrollment, they put it into this formula, and it gives us our prototypical funding, and then they fund those FTEs and then the material, supplies, and operating costs. I wanted to give an example of a prototypical just for Mariah. So for example, they tell us that at a high school, for every 600 students, you get 1.88. That would have meant that in 24-25 that we were funded for 3.2 principals, and we had 5. That includes Desert Oasis, because that's part of our high school numbers. We had 5. So that's kind of how that works. Okay. Enrollment, how do we project enrollment? We do a conservative roll-up, except for kinder. So our first grade numbers turn into this coming year, second graders. What I'm projecting in 25-26 for our kinder is going to be 282, and this year's kindergartners were at 332. So that's a big drop, and we'll show you why in here in just a second. And then the other grade that I don't do the roll-up is for our 11th graders because I subtracted 60 for our Running Start students. We're going to continue with our online, Othello online. So then in the 25-26, our total K-12 enrollment is going to be 4,234. That's 60 less than our actuals this current school year. Also for reference, this is 191 less than 1920, which was our highest enrollment number. And then we are projecting a decrease of another 163 by the end of the 28-29 school year. So this is showing what I budgeted in 24-25 and then what we actually had in 24-25. So I just wanted to point out it's my personal best. I actually did really good. I budgeted 4290 and came in at 4293. And just so Mariah knows, we are funded by the annual average of our students. So even if you had this many in September and then you had 100 more in June, they average it. In the next slide, this is how we project next year's enrollment. And you can see where everything but kinder and 11th grade just rolls down. And then the difference. So the big change then will be in the kinder, 2nd grade, and 5th grade, and 8th grade will have the biggest declines. So the next one is our birth rates. This is a really good indicator of what kinder enrollment will be. And if the 25-26 kinder students will be the ones that were born in 2020. And you can see that the births in Adams County went down. And then they're going to go back up, and then they're going to go back down, and then they're going to go back up. Kind of sound like what happened in my little family with my grandkids.
I think a complicating factor that could be impacting communities like Othello for the next couple of years will be federal pressures and federal changes to farm labor practices. Like, what's really going to happen in a place like Othello? If the work isn't there or people don't feel safe going to work, are they going to abandon this area? If there are adjustments made for the nuances that our economy and our community require, will we have an increase in people coming to work here? That's even more of I think a larger unknown than what we can try and predict with birth rates. And I don't think anyone has the answer for that.
Yeah, there's no telling how many students left for the summer and won't return. So we'll see. So the next one just shows our other enrollment. That's not K-12, and just so that you can see that we have the early learning, TK, Running Start, Open Doors, and the Othello Online. These enrollments and the CTE enrollment are not part of the prototypical funding formula. So I kind of want to point that out. The next one is a enrollment history by grade level. And like I said before, if you see 1920, it was the highest number of 4,425. The next slide is just in a graph. And what I'm pointing down with those arrows is here you can see that we are almost back down to the 16-17 enrollment numbers. And that's going to play a little part here in a future slide that I'll point something else out. The next slide, fund balance. Like I said, fund balance is our actual cash. And here you'll see where the beginning cash balances are for each fund, the revenues, the expenditures. There will not be any transfers out or into any of these funds this year. and then our ending fund balance. And we'll go into more detail for the general fund revenues. The next slide, this one shows what we budgeted last year and what we're budgeting this year. There really isn't too much change. The only thing that you will notice is that our expenses are about the same. They're going to be $592,000 less. And then that's due to the elimination of some positions. This slide was in one of our budget webinars. And I find it very interesting that in the year after the McCleary Act, our 18-19 school year, school districts were getting 51.6% of the revenues from the state. Now we're only getting 43.2. And like it says there, if we were getting the 51.6, the school districts would be getting about $6.5 billion more.
Can you walk me through that? What does that actually mean? Like, we're getting 43.2% of what, like the federal budget that
The
comes
state,
to the
so
state?
the state budget, the full state budget. You know how the state
Oh, okay.
does corrections and
Yep.
schools and whatever else they fund. Their revenues, we were getting 51% of the revenues that they were funding all those with,
Okay.
and now we're only getting 43.2.
I think what you will hear in Olympia when folks talk about this kind of data, the people on the other side who think we're funding schools adequately will say, the percentages really don't matter that much. You needed this much to run schools in 2021, and we're giving you that or more than we did previously. You need to figure it out. Where the other side would say, hey, as we earn more money and as we generate more revenue, we need to fund schools at the same level and keep those lines accelerating. So I think it's just a different philosophy on how to fund schools. I do want to step back 2 slides, I think. That one. So I'm going to talk through this, and then you guys are the experts, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the board. So we're getting just over $2 million more this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're spending $600,000 less.
Mm-hmm.
And then here in a few slides, you're still going to see how much of a deficit we're going to run. Because you would think, based on that math, we're 1.5 to the good. We should be able to put a little bit in the bank. And you'll learn quickly here why that's not the case for our school district or any school district in Washington.
One of the big things is that our revenues are going up 2.79%, mostly because of the 2.5 IPD that we're receiving. But if you were to, and I just calculated this one, if you were to look at a teacher's average in 24-25 compared to 25-26, what they're going to get this coming year, it's gone up like 4.3%. Because not only are we getting the 2.5% increase, but they also get a step increase for years of service. Okay. So this one is comparing the 25-26 budgeted revenues and compared it to what I budgeted last year for revenues and the differences there. And again, you'll see that we are going to get $2.3 million more. And then, the graph didn't show. So the graph, we'll pretend the graph is there.
It's on our slide.
Yeah. The revenue, I think that happens because I do it on PowerPoint and then they open it on Google Slides, sorry. Revenue, if you're ever wondering what all those local taxes are, local non-tax support, state general purpose, state federal, they're all listed there where those revenues are from. If you see the state special purpose, that amount that I'm projecting for this coming year, that includes some of the 24-25 carryover. And the next slide, that shows.
Could we go back to that one just for a moment? And I think you can see it graphically in the slides, but also that number, the nearly $10 million in federal special purpose. There were just a couple of those banks of money that were withheld for just a couple of months in Washington, and you saw the turmoil and tension that created and uncertainty. We should expect that this fall, as they move, as Director Gerber indicated, as they come back to DC and begin to plan for changes to the Federal Department of Education, that number is going to be impacted. So again, in a place like Othello, we need to begin to plan and strategize for what that means for our students and for our staff. That number will probably not be the same next year. Could be significantly lower.
That's correct. So these are our staff changes. The new positions and the eliminated positions. And then in the next slide shows the cost savings from eliminating positions. It's a net. So that total is $2.4 million. The next slide is our employee FTE by program. So here's where you would see the ones that are highlighted in blue. Those are our federal programs. Those are the employees that are how much we spend on salary and wages from federal programs. One thing that I wanted to point here is if you notice at the very bottom, it's comparing it to the 24-25 budget. So in the first column, you see our certificated staff. We're budgeting for 303.8 FTEs. Last year, we had 321 for a difference of 17.5. So we go through that for the certificated and the classified and the benefits, and you see there that the expenses are only going down $335,000. Do you have any questions on that?
Yeah. Okay, so you said we lost 17 people, but our total expenditures only went down 300 grand?
Yes, because remember, everybody got an increase in pay. So it wasn't only, like I said, it wasn't only the 2.5%, but it was also their years of experience.
We're fighting a losing battle, that feels like.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it does feel like it can feel a little bit hopeless, but and you think about it when you're communicating with your constituents and maybe people that will come to the site visits. I think what she just said is you own a business and you laid off 20 people but gave everybody else a raise. Would that ever work in the private sector?
Definitely, yeah.
You,
I mean, the people who stayed on would be thrilled,
yeah,
right? As an employer, I would be furious.
yeah.
But the people who are still working there are like, you know?
When you see the change in fund balance, you have to keep that in mind. Can you imagine if these positions would have been in our budget? So, the next slide is our student count on the left side versus how many employees we have on the right side. And you'll see there the change. So if you remember in slide 20, I said that our enrollment is right about what we were at in 16-17. In 16-17, you see we had 458 total FTEs, employees. And in 25-26, we are projecting 514. Even with the right sizing that we've done, that we're planning on doing, and what we've done the past couple of years.
With the same amount of enrollment, essentially.
Yes.
Wow.
The other thing that I wanted to point out here, if you see the 18-19 school year, that was our first post-McCleary contract, and you'll see that the staff, where the staff and the enrollment were right about, and then the changes that have happened since then.
Can I just ask, and this might be a question for Dr. Perez, but why do you think that is that happened? Why we have, you know, so many more student FTEs per student than we did, you know, back in 15, 16?
Learning loss during COVID?
Yeah, I think that's certainly one of the driving factors. We also, 16, 17 was also the year we made, we had been almost 2 decades in a transition in superintendent leadership. And so there were different priorities and different initiatives and different staffing levels that were required. And so you saw this ramping up of staff for a couple of years. And as we got into year 4 or 5 of that, then we had the pandemic, which again, funds poured in to keep people on staff. This downward trend in district fund balance and in where those lines would have crossed would have happened 2 or 3 years ago if we hadn't experienced the pandemic. So we knew this was coming, but I think it's tied, those are probably the 2 driving factors. And now for us, it's how do you unwind that? How do you go to a school and say, hey, you've been the principal here for 3 years, you've only known that you have 14 paras, you're still trying to get your work and get it done every day and not burn people out, and next year you only have 10 paras, right? There's this wind down process that we're going through as well to make sure that our staff feel supported and our kids do as well. So there's certainly some things we need to tighten up and think about, and in the federal programs area, that might really get accelerated here, maybe more quickly than anybody's ready for it, because we might get jolted if those funds don't come through.
Another thing to keep in mind with employee FTEs is admin and teachers, we're all 1.0 FTEs, but our classifieds, a lot of them are not 1.0 FTEs. For example, a para is only a 0.58. So. The next slide is just a closer look at what's going on with our federal and state grants and where the changes are projected to be at. I said previously that our pay's going up about 4.5%. You can see that a lot of these grants are not keeping up with that. So the next few slides is where are we spending our money, and they're going to be the same amount, 87.2 million, but it's going to be by program, and then we're going to go by activity, and then object. Every expenditure in our district has an account code where we're able to track where the money goes by the program, by activity, by object, location. We're able to run those reports. So this is, you can see the biggest chunk is for regular instruction. And then we have special education and then vocational, and it just goes on from there. In the next slide.
Sorry, real
Really
quick.
Sorry, go ahead, Aaron. You first.
What does compensatory education mean?
Those are our grants. I think,
I think besides regular instruction and special education, I might need like for example, for all the rest. Like what is vocational education?
vocation is our CTE program.
Okay.
Compensatory is our LAP, our bilingual, our Title I. Other instructional is our high cap program. Our community services is it's our early learning, it's our preschool. And then support services is our district-wide, and that would be like admin, technology, that's maintenance, transportation. And then that's the graph. So this slide is our expenditures by object. So here you're going to see it compared to last year's budget. Last year, I also budgeted about $87 million, so there isn't really too much change in there. The one thing that I wanted to point out was that our salaries and benefits are 77.39% of our budget, and last year it was 77.58, so about the same. But in 23-24, it was 75, and then the year before it was 73.
So a little
And
bit
that-
of,
Sorry, and that includes our retirement went down to about 2%. So the amount that we pay in our benefits and payroll taxes is going to be about 2% less than last year.
and this gets back to Director Gerber's question about staffing levels and when you see that experience. In 2016-17, when we were in the policy governance world, the board had a policy that the superintendent would not submit or they would not approve a budget that more than 80% of expenses was on salaries. And so that was, it really put some, gave some clear guidance to the school district. Well, you can see we're below that threshold. We've always been there and still in the same situation. So if you were trying to calculate those numbers, you would just say, well, how 80% buys me how many employees? Some years it was 500, some years it was 520, right? You just kind of play that game a little bit. So still another example of good budgeting and healthy practices, but revenues aren't where they need to be.
Yeah.
So
So
it's just crazy to me that our budgets are pretty close, and the amount that of our budget that is spent on salaries is pretty close, and we lost how many? I mean, we let go of how many people, and it literally feels like it didn't make a dent.
But like
it
I
did,
said,
it
imagine
did,
if,
but
yeah, imagine if that was part of our expenditures. Our
Yeah.
expenditures would have been
outrageous.
almost at 90 million.
Yeah.
In fact, I put it here. If we were to add that 2.4 million, our expenses would have been 89.7 million.
Mm.
So that would have reduced our ending fund balance even more.
I do want to, I think the other side of that is to also acknowledge that this board and other boards before you all were very mindful of putting some money in the bank so we could wind down in this way. I mean, nobody wanted to spend the money in this way, but that's where we're at. And I hear so many stories of other school districts where people walk in the spring and say, hey, we're in trouble, and next year we're doing this. And we've tried to wind it down, hard decisions like Amy indicated, and there'll be more hard ones to come. But as far as trying to navigate this, I feel as a community and as a school district and as a board, we've all done an okay job of saying some really hard things to try, and that would not have been possible if there wasn't money in reserve. Yeah. And so like some of you were part of those boards who kept that fund up, and we want to hold on to as much of that as we can, but also provide the services that our kids deserve.
One thing I want to point out about this slide too is that is our projected salaries and benefits, but that doesn't include something that might come up, additional in timesheets. So we usually get up to about the 80-81%. And that would be like we give the high school a $300,000 budget and they spend $100,000 of it on salaries. That would be an increase to our salary benefits at year end. The next slide, it's just object summary history for the past, since 17-18. And I always go back to the 18-19 school year as the first post-McCleary year. So you could see there in 18-19 that we spent on salaries $49 million, and we're projecting to spend $67 million this coming school year. That's an $18 million difference.
Yeah.
In the next slide, it's just, this is percentages. It's the same information, but by percentages. And this is just to show what Dr. Perez was saying, how much we spend on salaries. So in the 25-26 is the budget, and 24-25 is what we're projecting. We still haven't finalized professional development for this summer and timesheets for summer school. And then the 23, 24, and back, those are all actuals. So that is actually what we spent on salaries.
The salary from 82 to 77 there, 24, 25, 25, 26. That's a projection based on what we're planning on doing or what?
That's what our planning. So what we do is the big project that Angie does. She gets what we have on payroll now, and she puts everybody into the 25, 26 with the increase of the 2.5 and the increase of their years of service, and then that gives us a number. One of the things, this is where I said, if you look at the benefits and taxes, that's going down 2% because OSPI is funding 2% less in retirement. And then this one is just expenditures by activity, and it's just comparing it to last year's budget. Like I said, not very much difference. In previous years, it would be like, it would be like $3 million difference, and you would be able to see where we were budgeting in it. But this is all about the same. And then in the next slide, it's by program again, just kind of showing what I budgeted last year compared to this year. Oh, I knew that it was coming. So in this slide, it shows what all the programs are. If you ever want to know what the compensatory education is. And then in the next slide, this is the change to ending fund balance. What we're projecting this year to start is 13.8 million. That is what I calculated during June when I was finishing up my budget, projecting worst case scenario if all the schools were spending all their money, if all the programs were spending all their money, professional development, summer school, taking all that into consideration. That is my best professional guess of what our beginning fund balance will be. We won't know that until October, what it actually is. So if it is that 13.8 million, we will add the revenues of 84.5 minus the expenditures, and our ending fund balance will decrease by 2.6 million.
So one comment here about the history of the board and going back to 2016-17. Again, during policy governance, there was clear direction to the superintendent that the ending fund balance should never be below 10% of the budget. So we always use a round figure of $8 million. You should always have at least $8 million in the bank. And you can see, I don't know if Amy included a slide that built this out multiple years, but that will be below that threshold if we stay on a similar pattern that we're on.
That's coming.
Yeah.
I did want to read all these bullets because I think it's very important. We always get comments of, well, you have fund balance, you have fund balance, you can pay that out of fund balance. I wanted to express why fund balance is important. It covers gaps in cash flow. It ensures payroll is on time. If there's ever an emergency financial situation, it avoids sudden program cuts. It offsets revenue declines. It improves our bond credit ratings. It can fund one-time investments, like if we say we want to secure buy a fence, right? It supports our strategic goals. It follows board best practice. It meets standards set by the auditor. The auditor says we should have at least 60 operating days of expenses in our fund balance. And we'll get into that in a couple of slides down. It builds community trust. It demonstrates fiscal health, and it protects student learning.
I want to call back to slide 22 because the finance team will again check my math. I believe we said we were 1.5 to the good on slide 22. I don't know if we need to go back because then people will really be able to check me, but isn't that what we said on slide 22?
Yeah.
1.5 to the good. And you see that Amy's predicting that we're going to be almost 2.7 in the hole. I think you need to add 1.5 to that number to get the real deficit for the year. You see where I'm going?
No.
We got an extra 1.5, right?
Okay.
If we had spent at the same levels, or we hadn't, if you add 1.5 to that number, what number do you get? 3.2? 4.2.
4.2.
4.2.
Yeah, almost 4.2.
So we're getting less services, even though we got more money. We're down all those people and still running that hole. It's this idea that lots of school districts are dropping down into it. We're trying to ramp it down a little bit, but we've until the state intervenes, we're in really difficult circumstances.
Well, and yeah, I mean, we're 56 people heavy compared to where we were for the same enrollment in 15-16. Yeah, we're carrying around 56 more full-time employees for the same enrollment, according to page 31. So that's a lot of salaries. And that's a problem. We can't lose $4 million a year or we'll be out of money really fast, out of our fund balance.
Yeah, we're getting to that in our 4-year projection. Our next slide kind of shows back to the 16-17 of where we were at, and then compares it that we're almost in the exact same place as far as fund balance. But what you have to remember is that in between 15-16 and 16-17, we had a fund balance of $43 million. I mean, expenses of $43 million. Now our expenses are $87 million, and the fund balance is going to be the same. The other thing that I wrote here is this, like Pete says, this would have happened a lot sooner, but we had ESSER money. And if you remember from last year's budget presentation, and I wrote the number down, we reclassified basic ed salaries to ESSER because there was no, no, not carryover, what's that word? There was no supplanting. So we were able to say, to keep our classroom small, we reclassified basic ed salaries to ESSER, and that increased our fund balance by $7.9 million. That would have been money that would have been, we would have been in the negative.
Yeah.
So
That carried us.
that carried us. Remember we said we kicked the can down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also want to step back to something that Director Prowse just shared. If you look at 2016-17, and this is what I shared earlier, that gap between the green and the blue line, and you see what the district's done over the last 10 years, that gap, if we didn't hire people, you'd throw that money into the bank or spend it on services, right? So we had increased revenue. Hey, we have some extra money. Let's get some good people in front of our kids, and you end up with more employees. That's what you're chasing. And so I just want us to think about, I know we have more people, but we're providing different programming and different supports. I hope we're getting better outcomes, because the other part of this equation is the salaries are accelerating at a rate that their state is not funding, and we're not able to keep pace. There's two sides to it, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
We've maintained, the district has maintained since 2013, same spending patterns in relation to, we're going to put some, it's what save, give, invest, right? You can only do a few things with money. We've always done those things, and now these lines have crossed because of unfunded positions. So the point that you're making, and I take it, is that, well, now we have too many people, and that's accurate. How do we again wind that down in an appropriate way?
you know, if I'm a community member looking at this, I'm saying, in the last 10 years, you've doubled your expenditures. You have the same amount of students. What are your outcomes? Have your outcomes doubled? What have a teacher's salary has doubled in this time, or gone up? Our budget has doubled, so that means our salaries have increased significantly. Are we getting significantly more out of our teachers for the money that they've increased in the last 10 years? That's what I'd be asking myself as a business owner. I'm putting in all this extra money. Am I getting out? You know, is it worth double the cost? I hope the answer to that is yes. I don't know how to answer that. Because
Yeah. I think that it becomes so complicated in public work and working with young people because the other side of that is that green line includes significant changes in employee health benefits. It includes significant changes in retirement. It includes significant changes in utilities, in insurance, dramatic changes that school districts have had to deal with. And again, I think this is such a powerful slide because it tells a story about where we're at, but it also acknowledges that there's been a lot of good work done for over a decade in a way that is very systemic. I hope you would say to the community member, every year we spend a little bit less than we get. And I hope they would nod their heads and say, wow, that's how you should run your home. That's how you should run your business. And now we realize that we knew what was coming, and some of the contract disputes that you get into, they're not sustainable.
Yeah.
So the answer is you either have less people, you get people to take things out of contracts, or the state gives you some additional resources. One of those three things has to happen. Really, the only one we can control is we have less people, which is, I mean, again, we've demonstrated the last couple of years that's what we're doing. The outcome part of it, you know, I would hope that the lines I would focus on with them are the blue and the green ones. We're spending in a ratio, in a percentage, the same way we have, and I hope we're getting good outcomes. So,
Me too.
but in these moments when you don't have all that history, you're like, what? Salaries went up that much, and this is what's happening? I understand that narrative as well. So, anyway, this slide to me, when I first saw it, it tells a very complicated story, and if you spend some time looking at it, there's lots of factors that have to be considered when you see where we're at. And we would, like Amy said, 3 or 4 years ago, we would have been dealing with this without the ESSER impact.
Yeah, yeah.
So the next slide, we are required by OSPI to put this in our budget presentation. And what this one says is how much they fund us for material, supplies, and operating costs. So the very first number you see up there, they're going to give us 6.8 million, and we actually spend 12.5 million. And these are just basic ed.
The rest of that's funded through levy money?
This includes levy. Levy, Leah. Okay. So I wanted to read these. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Our opportunities and our threats of our budget for this coming year. Our strengths, we have continued collaboration and transparency. This presentation is probably really long, has a lot of slides in it, but I feel like the more information you have, the more you're capable, you're equipped to make decisions, right? We have continued budgetary realignment with resources available, you know, students versus FTEs, multi-year planning to anticipate fiscal pressures, and that will be our 4-year forecast, which is coming. Our weaknesses, we have declining student enrollment. We have IPD, that's not being fully funded. What I mean by that is we're getting IPD, but our grants are not keeping up with the IPD. Declining federal grant allocations, projected reduction of our fund balance. Opportunities, we can align spending with declining enrollment. We continue to seek out efficiencies and cost reductions. I think we've been really good this past year of not just finance, not just superintendent, but everybody says, just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend it. Do we really need this? You know, I think all of us are doing a really good job of doing that. And I'm talking about all our administrators. Oversight of all spending. Threats. Continued enrollment fluctuations. Increase in unfunded mandates like sub and substitute cost. Uncertainties in our federal grants. Reliance on fund balance to offset recurring expenses. And operating deficit. Our expenditures being more than our revenues for 2 years. Okay, so our 4-year budget. This is what our enrollment's going to look like in the next 4 years, based on, like I said, what we do with our kinder. We projected with Adams County birth, and then make an adjustment for running start. So you can see there that the decline at the end of the 4 years will be 162. In the next slide, this one has a lot of information on it. So we're projecting IPD for 26, 27, 27, 28, and 28, 29. Those are the green numbers. Could be more, could be less. We don't know at this point, so we're just doing our best guess on that one. So if you look in the projected revenues in the blue font, you can see the 88.8 million there. That's going to be a really big jump from the 84 that I'm projecting for this year because of the HB 2049 bump, if we pass our levy. The other big numbers or other numbers here that we need to look at is our ending fund balance. So you can see there that by school year 27-28, we're going to be running with a fund balance of about 5.8 million. And then in the 28-29, that's 319,000. In school year 27-28, when our fund balance gets below 7.7 million, we're going to be probably running into some cash flow issues. Like maybe we won't be able to pay timesheets this month. Maybe we're going to have to wait till our apportionment has an increase the following month. SAO, the auditor's office, recommends that we have 60 days of expenditures in our fund balance. Right now in this current school year, I think we're about 60. We're right about there. We were, but we're probably going to end a little bit less. And we were one of 60 county school districts in the state that had that. Wow. And now we're probably going to be with everybody else. So in 25-26, we're projecting to have 46 operating days in our fund balance. And then we're going to go all the way down to 1.2 days. So we will not meet the recommendations from the auditor's office in the school years. That's a pretty heavy slide, huh?
Yeah.
And like I said, the reason is we get the 2.5%, the IPD increases, but our expenses will be more than what the increase to our revenues are. The other, I'm just looking at my notes here. The other thing is 26, 27, 27, 28, 28, 29 is as if we passed our levy and we make no changes to our staffing or anything. So this is worst case. Okay. Next slide. basically just telling us where we're getting our revenues and our expenses and the changes from year to year. So you can see by school year 27-28, our expenses are going to be $5.5 million more than our revenues.
Yeah, we're already in trouble today.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get to 27, 28.
Yes, 27, 28 is without any action as far as continued right sizing, thinking about programs and, you know, tightening the belt up each year. That's, again, we have to present it in a way that says if nothing changed, what would happen? But even when we do those things, you can see we're just treading water, right?
Yeah.
That's how, I think you described it that way earlier, like it feels like we didn't make much progress and we're really just trying to tread water until there's a solution across the state.
And then the next couple of slides are just same information with graphs.
Could you go back to slide, the general four-year fund forecast? What does it take to get into binding conditions?
When you submit a budget where your ending fund balance is in the negative, so you can have your revenues and your expenditures to be more than your revenues, but it's okay if you have fund balance. But once that fund balance goes away and you're projecting a negative ending fund balance, you go into binding conditions.
So there are 8 school districts that have a 0 or a negative number where we have our 319 already.
Wow.
And maybe when that number gets to 80 school districts, the state will figure it out. But right now it's 8.
Well, every school district in the state has to report this 4-year forecast. And you think OSPI would be on top of it to
Yeah.
help lobby?
One of the, I think that's a good point, Ken. One of the self-inflicted parts of this, so Amy has showed me a number of these from across the state. What you'll see, at least everyone she showed me, the finance team in those districts, they copy and paste 25, 26, and they just put it in there. They don't do the math. We noticed a couple in our region that were doing that, and then now you read in the paper all of a sudden that they're out of cash, and we could predict that, but they weren't. So I think OSPI owns some of it for sure, but also there are local school districts who either out of fear or incompetence are not giving that data to folks, and they're not prepared. So
I think it's a scary situation where you're saying, oh, well, I'm just going to spend every single dollar that I get, and that's it, you know, where you're not even thinking about, you know, yeah, you're getting the 2.5%, but what is it actually increasing? 5 years ago, our property insurance was $400,000. Now we got a bill for 1.2 million.
Yeah.
You can't just copy and paste.
Yeah.
You can't just say, oh, my expenses are going to go up just 2%. No, it doesn't work that way. So we'll just go to this one. I was in a webinar last week, and a lot of the school districts that are submitting budgets like this, one of them said this, and it just really resonated with me, and it said, prioritizing fiscal health now ensures that future students will benefit from stable, high-quality education. So I feel like every decision that we make from now on, it's going to be for our future students.
Yeah.
So. And then we're going into the 4-year forecast for the other 4 funds. So the first one is our capital projects. Our projected beginning balance on that one will be about $1 million. And this is a fund where we do all the major repairs and renovations come from this fund. We have had an item here for Luticaga roof repair for $400,000 for a couple years, but we want to make sure that we have that because we know it might be coming. And then there's the other line item is other repairs as needed for $752,000. Whether or not we use it, it's going to depend on what the year brings, right? The scary part is if we do use it, if we do have those needs, there's no money coming into this fund because there's nowhere to get it from. So you can see there, if we were to have some major repairs, we would really be hurting. Not only in the general fund, but also in the capital projects.
So our roof repair isn't covered by insurance?
Not generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't we make that happen? Yep. Just kidding.
Okay. So, any questions on that? The next one is our debt service, and this is where we make our bond payments from. So the money that we get from property taxes goes into here. We make our bond payments. As you can see here, in 27-28, we have an ending fund balance of $19,000 because the bond will be paid. And then the ASB 4-year forecast fund is pretty stable. Nothing major. And then the transportation vehicle fund. So we get, our revenues here come from depreciation of our buses. So depending on how many buses we got in the past, depends on how much revenue we get. And then we purchase our buses with that money. Okay, so what are our next steps? August 25th, we have a budget hearing, and then gives them opportunity for public comment, and then a budget resolution where we will ask the board to approve a resolution for the 25-26 budget. And then August 31st is the last day that we have to submit it to OSPI. And I did forget to mention at the beginning that ESD has reviewed my budget and gave it its blessing, so. And then I always like to end with pictures from the past year, so. Questions?
I just want to say thank you so much. I know everything has gotten more expensive in the last 10 years. I mean, when I think of my own budget of, what I was spending in 2015 to what I'm spending today, of course, everything has gone up so much. So I appreciate that you guys are doing the absolute best that you can with, the hand that we've been dealt. I know it's going to be a tough couple of years coming up where we have to make some more hard decisions, but this is a ton of work. This is so much work. So thank you for the hours and hours and hours you've poured into every graph and chart and everything to help dumb it down for us so that we can get a grasp on it. So I really appreciate all the work that you put in, and I hope when I'm asking questions or, processing this out loud that it's never like, I'm not trying to be your dad and scolding you for spending too much money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, oh no, we're in a pickle,
Yeah.
and we got to figure something out as a team to how we're going to get out of it so that we can sustain and do what's right by our kids, like you said. So just thank you so much for all of your hard work and for everything that went into this report, and for making it so that we're not one of those school districts that's already blown past our fund balance. And you guys have been so responsible and dependable that I know that when people ask, what's going on with the school district, are you guys in trouble? I've heard this about Moses Lake or these other schools, and honestly, I feel so confident in your guys' abilities. I always answer very confidently, like, no, we have a really great accounting team, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they know where we're at. So anyway, just thank you so much. And I have so much faith in you guys, and appreciate that the school district it's not just teachers that make a school district run, that's for sure. And you guys put in so much work. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
We couldn't do it without you. Literally.
I have a lot of rock stars on my team. I appreciate them, and they are amazing. Ask anybody, not just them. Alondra, Alexa, Aurora. They're amazing. They are amazing. I am so blessed to have them.
Thank you guys.
No, I just really appreciate the work and the time that you put into it. It's really helped benefit I know with even the reduction of almost 20 staff members for next year's budget, but because of how good you are with a budget, and you got the trust of all the employees in the district with that, everybody was able to come to the table fairly easy and understand the numbers. And I think it's going to be great help for the next couple years that are coming too, that everybody will understand these numbers and how they're coming together. Because I do see some more difficult times, and it's going to take us all to work together to get through them. So I really appreciate it.
And I always say, I have a spreadsheet for that. Ask Pete. He knows I love my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, do you have anything else? Okay, and also thank you to you, Superintendent Perez, for putting this together and making it all work, and for walking us through it. Thank you. We will move on to item D1, policy review. This is just for everyone to review, and we'll be approving that next meeting. Do we have any public comment? No? Okay, we will move on to upcoming events. We've got student registration starting next week in the OHS gym. We've got a regular board meeting, we've got a special board meeting August 25th and at 6:30 p.m. and then our regular scheduled board meeting August 25th at 7 p.m. And then on August 25th is also new teacher orientation. The 26th is the all staff orientation, and the 28th is the first day of school. So that's what we got coming up. Now we'll move on to the board self-assessment of the meeting. Excellent presentation from all of our finance team on our 25-26 budget. Really appreciate all of the work that went into that.
Also,
Sorry, you go first.
also Carlos's presentation on the
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, just to reiterate what he was saying is giving those requirements for students. I feel like it was a lot different when I was in high school to compare to what it is now. So it's nice to see that we're keeping people accountable, but also keeping our coaches accountable as well. You know, sometimes we get lost in we want to win, we're going to put the best person out there, but it's not always about that. It's about how we can succeed later in life and giving students those accountabilities for later on. So thank you for that.
But we miss Cesaro. It's never fun not having a full board. Anybody have anything else?
wish our new meetings could continue, but we know we gotta go back to eating here.
I know. My throat choked a little when I said 7 p.m.
And for me, I'm like, please.
And you're excited for
Yeah.
him?
It's because I have to work longer now. I don't get off till 6 because I have the 2-hour break.
Okay, at this time, the board will recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss potential litigation. No action will be taken following the executive session. This meeting is adjourned.